All right, so we are going to be starting on our next story in our benchmark reader, so make sure you have this out. It is the Dred Scott decision, and for a little background, I have a video I'm going to show you guys on Dred Scott, so let me get that set up. Again, if you, for some reason, don't hear it, please send me a message in the chat, and I will stop it and try and figure out what's going on with my technical difficulties. So let's go ahead and start with our video on Dred Scott.
Being a leader and standing up for what is right is what we love in history. So now, fun facts about Dred Scott. Okay, in history, like I said before, standing up for what is right is what we love about our heroes. So I want to talk to you about an African-American hero in history named Dred Scott. You see, Dred Scott is famous in history for fighting for his freedom and taking his case all the way to the Supreme Court because he sued to get his freedom and wanted to be treated equally. Dred Scott was born in 1799, and like many other African Americans during this time, Dred Scott was born a slave and couldn't read or write. So a sad part about American history is also at this time, African Americans were treated as property. So in 1830, Dred Scott was sold to a man named Dr. John Emerson. The cool thing about Dr. John Emerson was he was a military doctor, so at least Dred got to travel the country with Dr. John Emerson and see things that other slaves couldn't see. Another cool thing about being with Dr. John Emerson was Dred Scott got married and had a family with 2 children. After they returned back to St. Louis in 1842, a year later, Dr. Emerson died, and his wife Irene sent the Scotts and their children to work for other families in St. Louis, which wasn't cool. Well, after that, Dred Scott said, I ain't taking it no more. Not only did he sue for her treating him poorly, but he also sued for his freedom, saying that they had lived in Wisconsin and Illinois, and these were territories that didn't allow slavery, so he should have been set free. Okay, now the way court works is you can sue someone and lose or win, but there are different levels to the court system. Kind of like, you're playing a video game, different levels to the game. So you can go as high as the Supreme Court in the court system, and that's like going to the top level of a game, like the boss level, because once you go there, that decision is final. This is where Dred Scott ended up losing, although he won a couple of times earlier with his court case. In the end, although he lost his fight for freedom, many may look at it and think, that stinks. The Supreme Court said he would have to be a slave for the rest of his life. But check this out. Although Dred Scott didn't win his case in the Supreme Court, it set a fire around the country. That's right. People in the North heard about Dred Scott's situation, and they got mad and wanted to stand up. And people in the South, they got all crazy thinking slavery was cool, and they stood up wanting to keep slavery going. So this was one of those things that a lot of people say started problems with the North and the South, and in the end led to the Civil War, which ended slavery. Although Dred Scott lost his case in court, he set the tone for African Americans to stand up for their rights and later be free in America. So I hope you enjoyed those fun facts about Dred Scott.
Awesome. So that's, oh, somebody's coming in. That was just meant just as a brief introduction for you on Dred Scott to give you some background knowledge. Now, like I said, make sure you have out your benchmark reader and you have a highlighter and something to write with. And let me go ahead and mirror to the iPad. All right. And let's get reading. Do I have somebody who wants to start off with paragraph 1 for me? Hazel, go for it.
On March 6, 1857, the United States Supreme Court made a decision that stunned the nation. Dred Scott, an enslaved African American, had gone to court asking for his freedom in 1846. 11 years later, the court decided against him. The justices said that no black person, free or slave, could ever become a citizen of the United States. African Americans had no legal rights. Therefore, no black person could ask the court for his or her freedom. Scott had to remain enslaved.
Can I read paragraph 2? Wait, what? I can't hear you. My internet isn't working.
No, we can't hear you.
I can't hear her either.
I can't hear her either.
I can't hear her either. Can't hear her.
No, she's on mute.
Oh, I can't hear her.
No, she just went
Everyone,
mute.
mute. Miss Triplet, you're muted.
You have to unmute yourself, Miss Triplet.
I still can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
I think it's our internet because I can't hear her either, and like 20 other people can't hear her. It's not like the internet.
I don't think anyone can hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear. I can't hear.
Still
hear a
can't.
single thing. I can't hear you either.
So guys, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Remember our Zoom etiquette, right? And if like 2 people say they can't hear me, then chances are good everybody can't. So we don't all need to start going and talking about it, right? Okay. Thank you for pointing out that you couldn't hear me. So let's take a look at what we just read. So we started, hang on, somebody, I can hear Mrs. Hood in the background. Let's see. There we go. I'm gonna have to tell Mrs. Hood I could hear her teaching today. So what's important from this first paragraph, right? What should we be highlighting? Dates are usually a good thing to note. So, and really where this whole starts is March 6, 1857, when the United States Supreme Court made a decision that stunned the nation, right? That's huge. Like that's a huge hook to me. And we're gonna be talking about hooks and starters in our own writing here soon. But that right there makes me want to keep reading and be like, oh my goodness, what happened? What did they do that stunned the nation? Yes,
Miss Triplet, I checked on my books and I couldn't find the Dred Scott decision. What does it cover?
it's in the same one that was last week, with the Constitution then and now.
Oh,
And we're on page 12. Okay. And then really the main other key part, the key statement from this is that no Black person, free or slave, could ever become a citizen of the United States. That's huge. People who lived in the country before us can't even be citizens of the country? That doesn't sound quite right to me, but that's the way it was during that point in history. So it's important for us to know that and have that beginning knowledge about what it was like in the United States at that time. All right, let's go ahead and read paragraph 2.
slavery was
A hotly debated issue.
in the country, and the deliberate seemed to grow more complex and
Heated?
heated each day. At the time, half the states allowed slavery while the other half did not. As the country's population grew, new
Territory? Territories?
territories and states were added, should they allow slavery or not. Until the 1840s, leaders had disagreed, but 4 found ways to compare on the issue. However, over time, defenses depended and compromises were harder to reach.
Good. So slavery was a big issue at this time, right? 1857, huge, lot going on around the idea of slavery in the United States. This whole paragraph is really based around one statement. Half the states allowed slavery while the other half did not. And it mentioned new territories. Just because a piece of land was now part of the United States didn't automatically make it a state. There were things they had to do to become a state. So they were called territories before they were official states. So they were trying to figure out, well, these new territories, these new states, are they slave states and territories, or are they non-slave? Are they free states and territories? How do we know? And so there were a lot of compromises and a lot of disagreements around this issue of, do they join free or do they join as slave? Let's keep going. Oh, hang on just a second. Actually, let me hit up these two. Down here at the bottom, we have these two text features at the bottom, the two quotes. And one of them is from Lawrence Kite. He was a member of Congress from South Carolina. And this quote came from a speech to the House of Representatives he gave in January of 1860. And he said, "The anti-slavery party argue that slavery is wrong in itself. We of the South argue that slavery is right." So it's just showing that disagreement that they were having. And then the other one is from Horace Greeley, and he was a publisher for the New York Tribune in 1854. And he said, "We are not one people. We are two peoples. We are a people for freedom and a people for slavery. Between the two, conflict is inevitable." So they're showing that there are huge differences between these two groups of people, those who wanted slaves and those who didn't want slaves. And that conflict was gonna happen over this topic. Emily, do you have a question or do you want to read?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Okay, hang on. I see Emily's hand. Let me get her first.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I want to read.
Okay, so hang on, Emily. Gabby, I see you had a question.
Yeah, what did you highlight in paragraph 2?
Paragraph 2, it was just that statement that half the states allowed slavery while the other half did not. I am
Okay.
sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I forget that sometimes.
Okay.
All right, Emily, go for it. Southerners.
Wait, I had a question too.
Okay, I'll be right back to you, Jaslyn.
What was that, Miss Triplet?
It's Southerners.
Southerners and North. Miss Triplet, I can't hear her.
Okay, then you can just like read it along by yourself while she's reading it.
Southerners and Northerners were not willing to compromise any longer. Some people believed that the only solution was for the country to be split into two nations, one slavery and one free. Many Southern leaders were threatening
Secession.
the splitting off of the slave states for the Union. Just at the critical time, the Dred Scott case arrived at the Superior Court, the highest court in the nation.
In the nation. Good. Awesome. Excellent. So this is all just giving us background information right now. Like, we're not really getting into Dred Scott and who he was and what's going on yet. This is just some background information. So from this one, really, again, there's kind of one sentence that sums up this whole paragraph. The key idea in this one is that some people believed that the only solution was for the country to be split into two nations, one slave and one free. So here we have this brand new country, this United States of America, and we all came together and we created this Constitution and we agreed to it. And now suddenly, even within our own United States, we're starting to butt heads and disagree and think, well, maybe one country's not right. Maybe we need to split and be two countries. Jaslyn, question?
I have something to say.
Okay.
Like, people should think about it as if they want to make slaves African, like if they want to have slaves, why don't they make the white people slaves? If they like, then they will like actually think about it twice.
Yeah. Why do Black Americans have to be the only ones being slaves? And they weren't. There were also white people and people from other nationalities who were slaves, but predominantly it was Black Americans who were slaves. Jordan, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
No, I just want to read the next paragraph.
Okay. Avery, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, wasn't it like in different states, wasn't it like if this person traveled to your state and your state doesn't allow slaves, but they were trying to like get away. Don't you have to return them?
You're supposed to. Yep. Yep.
And if
All
you-
right. Was it Jordan who had her hand up to read?
Yeah.
I forgot already. I'm sorry. All right, Jordan, you're up.
The Dred Scott case would decide the fate of just one man, an African American who was fighting for freedom from slavery. However, the Supreme Court took on his case hoping to use it to solve the most important issue of time, whether the new territories and state would become slave free or free. Instead, their decision added fuel to their fire.
Good. So yes, the decision the Supreme Court is making is deciding the case for Dred Scott. But really, it's deciding a whole big other issue. It's not just deciding about Dred Scott's case. It is deciding what is going to happen to the United States of America. And that is the huge part that we need to highlight from this one. So, hoping to use it to solve the most important issue of the time, whether new territories and states would become slave or free. That's that huge key idea from that paragraph. So let's take a minute. We've read the first 4 paragraphs. Let's take a minute to kind of think about what our main idea is from these first 4 paragraphs. What is that information that we want to make sure that we get down? And I'm going to say, and again, you might come up with something different, but you should be summarizing kind of the parts that you've highlighted in the part that we've read so far. And I'm going to say Dred Scott, and I'm going to do something here that sometimes you'll see in writing. After it, I'm going to put in parentheses, I'm going to put a D period and an S period. And that means that from now on out, when I write his name, I'm just going to put a DS. I'm going to put his initials. But I do it this way at first, so I know what I mean when I just put that DS. So I'm going to say the Dred Scott decision, it came at an important time. In the debate, over slave versus free territories, and that the court's decision against DS, Dred Scott, it fanned the flames. We'll get fancy here. Fanned the flames surrounding the issue. Squeeze it in, surrounding the issue. So the phrase that I put in there, it fanned the flames. Think about it. Like if you are camping or something and you make a fire, when you kind of fan the flames, it makes the flames grow bigger. You're giving them more oxygen, so they're growing bigger. You're getting a bigger fire. So this decision fanned the flames. It really made this whole idea of free versus slave blow up and get so much bigger. I'm going to read the caption that goes with the text feature that we have at the bottom here, the map. So a map and a caption are both text features that you'll see in different writing. And the caption says, this map shows the United States in 1854. California had recently been admitted to the Union as a free state. So California was just added. The borders of Texas were settled in a new compromise. Lawmakers agreed that Utah Territory and New Mexico Territory would decide later whether they would become slave or free states. So you can see the purple area at the bottom. Those are the slave states. The pinkish ones are the free states. And then the green ones hadn't decided yet necessarily whether they were free or slave.
What about the orange ones?
That's what I'm kind of reading. So, so up here where Washington and Oregon are, those, it says that they were open to slavery by the Dred Scott decision. So after the Dred Scott decision, they had slaves. Looks like this Kansas, Nebraska area was open to slavery. Okay.
The
All right.
pink one and then the other orange one are the two ones that are not open to slavery.
It's not.
But what about the yellow one? The yellow one.
Across the top and the bottom.
Yeah, what about
that's
Canada and Mexico?
Those aren't part of the United States. Those were separate. Avery, I see your hand is up. Sweetheart, what can I do for you?
I have 2 questions.
All right.
So on the map, what does the yellow mean?
So like Canada and Mexico,
Yeah.
those aren't part of the United States.
Okay. I was like, what?
Yes, those are separate.
Okay. And then my second one was, I forgot my second one. I'll come back when I remember.
Okay, that's okay, because you know what I remembered that I just forgot that I meant to do when we first logged on? I forgot to do the flag salute. So we've read a couple pages. Let's take a minute to stand real quick. We'll do our flag salute.
I'm trying to do the flag, Jalea.
I just guessed it.
All right.
30.
Like trying to place it at the stand. There we go.
Okay.
All right. Ready? Salute. Pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
All right. Woo. We got that done. Did Diesel ever make it on? Not yet? Okay. All right. So let's see. Avery, your hand's back up. Did you remember?
No.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Yeah, so when, I don't know who was asking the question, but it wasn't Avery. It was the person before Avery. Someone kept talking, so I didn't hear what you guys were saying.
I think it was Jaslyn, and she was asking some questions about the map.
Oh, okay.
All right, so moving on to page 14, we've got some nice old-time photographs here of Harriet and Dred Scott. So now, since they lead off this next page, this makes me think, oh yes, we're finally gonna start getting into Dred Scott and getting some background information on who he was and this case that was so huge for United States. Avery, do you remember your question? Are you there, Avery? I see your hand is up. All right. Anna, do you want to go ahead and read?
Sure.
Okay. So we're on paragraph 5. Oh, I think you muted yourself, Anna.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Who is the man at the center of the case? Dred Scott had been enslaved his whole life. He could not read or write. He was in his 40s when he began his struggle for freedom. Yet he never gave up and
steadfastly
continued to fight through his disappointments.
Good. So this one's just background information. I'm not really going to highlight anything in this one at this point. So I see lots of hands up. Are these questions or do you want to read? Avery, did you remember your question? All right. Jaslyn, did you have a question?
Yeah, my sound isn't working. It's like super quiet. And even when I turn it up all the way,
it's gonna end
still
in 49
super quiet.
seconds. Okay,
so I don't get.
Let's just do it.
What's happening?
Do it.
Okay, we're just still reading aloud. So just continue to do the best you can while we're going. And remember that we are recording this. So if you need to go back and listen to it later, that might be helpful to you. But just, follow along as best you can. Okay. Avery, did you remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
So was Harriet, or I don't know how to pronounce that. Did I pronounce it right?
Harriet, yep.
Who was that?
We're going to find out when we read this next paragraph.
Okay.
Okay. Morgan, do you have a question or is your hand up to read?
To read.
Go for it.
Scott was born to enslaved parents in Virginia around 18,000. He was owned by Peter Blow. By 1830, Blow had moved his family and his enslaved people to St. Louis, Missouri. In Missouri, Scott was sold to an Army surgeon, John Emerson. Emerson was sent on military assignments to Illinois, a free state, where he stayed for more than 2 years. Then Emerson took Scott to live with him in Wisconsin Territory, also free. Scott married an enslaved woman, Harriet, in Wisconsin. Their daughter, Eliza, was born there as well.
All right. So this one does have some good background information that we want to make sure we highlight. So first one is that he was born to enslaved parents in Virginia. So his parents were slaves, and in Virginia, which was a slave state, which makes him a slave, then being born to enslaved parents in a slave state. Let's see. He was owned by Peter Blow. He was sold to an Army surgeon, John Emerson, and that's who owned him for a good portion of his life. They went to Illinois, which was a free state. So now Scott is living in a free state with the Emersons. And then the Emersons took them to live with them in the Wisconsin Territory, which was also free. So he's gone from Virginia to Illinois, which is free, to Wisconsin, which is free. And yeah, I think that's what I want to highlight from that one. Okay. And now, oh, well, I'll tell you after we read this next paragraph. Avery, question?
Yeah, so if you were like a free state and you had a meeting with whoever like is in charge like you, could you make it a slave state, or is it free the entire time?
And that's part of what they're trying to decide, is what makes a free state and what makes a slave state and who makes that decision. So
okay.
That's part of the battle that's going on right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Corey, do you have a question or do you want to read?
Question. Does is Scott in his name part of his first name, or is that his last name?
Scott is his last name.
Okay.
Kind of a weird first name, huh? All right. Can I have somebody read paragraph 7? Preferably someone who hasn't had a chance to read yet. Remember, I'm patient. I can wait.
Emerson was then transferred to Louisiana, where he married
Eliza
Sanford. Emerson and his wife moved back to Wisconsin Territory, and then to St. Louis, where Emerson died in 1843. In Emerson's will, Scott and his wife were left to his widow.
Mm-hmm.
As enslaved people, they were considered property. They could not be bought, sold. Oh wait, they could be bought, sold, transferred, or inherited.
Inherited, perfect. So key part here, in Emerson's will, right, because Emerson died, Scott and his wife were left to his widow. A widow is like the person who is alive when your spouse dies. So Eliza is a widow now that Emerson has died. And you guys notice that connection there? What did Scott name his daughter?
Eliza.
Eliza. What was Emerson's wife's name?
Eliza.
Eliza. Yep. I wonder which Eliza came first. But so, yeah, so something, to note there is that slaves are property. They can't be bought, sold. They can be. See, Jackson, I caught myself just like you caught yourself. Slaves can be bought. They can be sold. They can be transferred between people. They can be inherited by people. They have no rights. So let's go ahead and summarize these 3 paragraphs real quick. So I'm going to again use my abbreviation. Dred Scott was born into slavery. And he moved many times with his owners. And they lived in both free and slave states. All right, give you a minute to get that copied down. Avery, question?
Were all black people, were they all slaves, or was it just the poor ones that were slaves?
It depended on what state you were in, mainly. That was a key part to it, is what state you were in.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. We're almost done. We're going to do one more page. All right. Emily, question?
Yes, did Dred Scott had 2 daughters or 1?
1.
I thought it says 2. Never mind.
Oh, it says 2?
No, I just thought it says 2.
Okay. All right. So, someone new. I need someone new to read. Landon, I see you unmuted, but I can't hear you.
I'll read it.
Thanks, Carter.
As enslaved people, Scott and his family had no choice about where they lived. They were moved from place to place, sometimes to slave states or territories, and sometimes to free places where they lived, and for how long they became to the key facts on which Scott based his claim for freedom.
Good. So, yep. So even though they were in some of the free states, they were still considered enslaved people, and they had no choice about where they lived. They had to move with their owners, and that's where they stayed until their owners moved again. And that the free states that they spent time in was one of the big things that they argued about in the court case. Okay, somebody read chapter 9, not chapter 9, paragraph 9 for me.
In April 1846, 3 years after Emerson's death, Scott and his family were living in Missouri, a slave state. Scott asked a Missouri court for freedom for himself and his family. He claimed that they should be free because they had lived in a free state, Illinois, as well as in the Wisconsin Territory, where slavery was also banned.
Awesome. Yep. So Here's the basis of his case. Scott asked Missouri court for the freedom for himself and his family, and that they should be free because they lived in a free state. That was the reason he felt they should be free, because they had lived in a free state. All right, somebody give me paragraph 10, last one for today.
Why did Scott wait so long?
Oh, you've read, haven't you, Jaslyn?
No, I haven't.
Okay, go for it. Sorry about that.
Why did Scott wait so long to make this claim? He may have not known earlier that he had the right to claim his freedom, or something may have happened that caused him to take action. Some say that Scott may have tried to buy his freedom from Emerson's widow, but that she refused. Could that event have inspired him to seek freedom through the courts? No one knows.
Awesome. So, what is it that finally changed his mind and made him decide he wanted to seek freedom? All right, let's go ahead and take our last note down here. And Morgan, I see your hand. Give me just a second and I'll get to you. I'm going to say that Dred Scott said that he and his family should be freed from slavery because they had lived in a free state and a free territory. Morgan, what's your question?
What's 3 times 10? For the quote at the bottom,
Yep.
What is it on top of? Like,
okay, so that was the next thing that I was going to head down to while you guys are finishing up that writing. So it's
and also,
go ahead.
And also, I kind of want to read the quote.
Okay, you want to read what? Go for it.
Yeah. Dred Scott, a man of color, respectfully states that he is claimed as a slave. He is entitled to his freedom. Dred Scott's petition to sue for freedom, April 6, 1846.
Okay, awesome. So you can kind of make it out at, you know, if you're reading it, you can see the Dred Scott, a man of color, respectfully states. So this is his petition to sue for freedom. So it's to something like, probably the Honorable John something or other. It's to a judge, some circuit court. So it's, I know it's cursive, so a lot of y'all don't know how to read cursive, but it's basically outlining his case for why he thinks that he should be free. You know, down at the very bottom down there, I can see the name Peter Blow, which was his original owner, if you remember. I can make out John Emerson in there. So it's his statement to the court of why he should be free. Avery, question?
So if in the state, he was in Illinois, so I think what came to his attention is like, nobody else is working in this state, why should I? So that's why.
I think a lot of people did still have slaves, and maybe, oh my goodness, maybe not necessarily slaves in the same sense, but they did still have employees who worked for them. So it wasn't that he was the only one in that state doing that job.
Okay, now I get it. It was like, why did they deny him if they're in a free state of Illinois? Okay.
All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to switch over what I'm sharing, and let's take a look.
Can I read
Hang on.
cursive part?
Let's take a look at your guys' independent work. So I assigned this to you during recess. It's just like we did last week. There's 3 days worth on here. We're going to just do 1 day at a time. So today you've got a couple questions and then a short little 5-sentence essay to write. They want to know what are the key details for the Dred Scott decision so far. And we just went through and we just wrote down a whole bunch of them in our reader. So you could just type up what we just wrote down in there. They want you to reread paragraph 7 and talk about what happened when John Emerson died. Okay. And then the other page that you're doing is to use the key details that you've identified in the first half to write a summary. Notice it says at least 5 sentences. Guys, you're getting grades, target basic limited on these. And if you're not putting in the work to earn a target grade, I'm not going to give you a target grade. You guys earn your grades. I don't give grades. You earn them. So you're gonna get the grade that you earn, okay? All right, any other questions?